So the other day I finished Elden Ring. To many people, that may not seem like a big deal, but for me, this was an interesting time. Before this, my experience with FromSoft games was watching a friend play Dark Souls 3 at his house, and playing Bloodborne from the PlayStation Plus collection. Both of those games, I only played very, very briefly. I got to a boss, it killed me, and I stopped. Because I had no financial investment in both of these experiences, I did not mind what happened other than a mild annoyance. But watching other people play various FromSoft games was really jarring for me. Make no mistake, I am not an advocate for an easy mode, or making games easier for journalists. I am also no stranger to difficulty in video games. I have beaten the Pantheon of Hollowness in Hollow Knight. For anyone that knows what that is, you should know what a feat that is. So if difficulty wasn't a factor of me not enjoying a game, what was? The combat style of FromSoft games and others like it, with its atmosphere, were a huge off-put for me. There's a certain art style a lot of video games have, including FromSoft games, that are really off-putting to me. I'm not sure if there's a specific name for it, but other games I can think of in this vein are Middle-earth, Shadow of War, Monster Hunter, Days Gone, The Division, Conan Exiles, Skyrim, and again, pretty much all the Souls games. I'm not sure what it is, but all these games are really off-putting to me just by looking at them. Maybe it's how the characters are designed. Maybe it's how the textures look. Maybe it's the color palette. Who knows? But what about the combat style? This is also going to sound strange, but any game to me that is a third-person melee weapon, slow combat style is a huge turnoff for me. Games in a similar vein for me are Assassin's Creed games. I don't like any of them because of that. Other games are For Honor, and probably the most heinous of all, the first half of God of War for the PS4. I'm not sure why I don't like this combat style, maybe because it's too slow. I think it's because there is a disconnect between button inputs and what is happening on screen. I enjoy games like God of War 3, Spider-Man PS4, and the Batman Arkham series. They are also third-person melee games, but it is because it's at a faster pace and there's a direct correlation between what button you press and what happens on the screen. Let's take a look at some of my favorite games of all time. Hollow Knight, It Takes Two, and Doom Eternal. In each of these games, the movement is fluid and responsive. Everything I do is because I press the button at that time. But in these kinds of games, whether it's because of a stamina bar or slow animations, but when this kind of stuff happens where I am clearly reading an attack and pressing the correct buttons to respond to an attack, and my guy just stands there like an idiot. This might seem petty, but this kind of stuff really turns me off to games. And that's okay, not everyone likes every game. Hideo Kojima is right when he says Americans only like shooty games, and that's why 11 of my 20 favorite games of all time don't have any type of gun in them. But I think there's a point in when looking at my favorite games, they are all super fast, responsive games. Games with slower combat loops really lose my attention. If Red Dead Redemption 2, God of War, and The Last of Us games didn't have incredible storytelling, atmospheres, and amazing worlds to explore, I wouldn't even think about these games because their combat is too slow for me to enjoy. So why did I try Elden Ring? Well, after watching a ton of reviews of people with all sorts of perspectives, I was convinced. I think the nail in the coffin was Angry Joe's review. After really paying attention to what he was saying, especially since he and I were in the same boat of not really being Dark Souls people and ending up enjoying the game. I also heard this game was the most accessible of the Souls games so far, with additional mentions of the world of Elden Ring being insanely large and rich of exploration, not to mention the game looks gorgeous. I was convinced to buy Elden Ring. So with Elden Ring, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I picked the Astrologer class because I'm quirky and random like that, and went on my journey. I asked my friend who has played this game longer than the existence of the known universe, can you make a good range build, as I wanted to stay away from my melee combat hatred as much as possible. He said it's a viable thing to do, so I started doing some research on some good builds. This Comet Azure build caught my eye as it involved the Civil Rights Beam, and went on my way. I'm not going to go into detail of my Elden Ring adventure as it took 70 hours to finish, and that's way too much to talk about, so I'm just going to talk about some struggles and things I liked and disliked about the game. Again, I want everyone to be absolutely clear on the fact that this is my first Souls game. I am an outsider, casual, trying to dip my toes in the water. So one of my first frustrations with the game is that you can't immediately start off with your build. The guide I had said to try and spec into intelligence weapons as much as you can. However, starting out, a ton of the weapons I got needed points into strength, dexterity, or whatever else that wasn't intelligence. So I was getting frustrated that everything I was getting was garbage and that I couldn't keep up with the requirements my weapons wanted. I knew at some point you could respec, but that was much later in the game. You don't get a lot of spells in the early game, at least I didn't find any, so it felt like I was wasting my time. I guess I can go into this a little bit. One of my main gripes of Elden Ring, and a lot of games like this, is that it takes way too long to go from a guy with a stick to my civil rights beam build I wanted. This is a problem I had in Hollow Knight as well, but for more subsequent playthroughs, I had a problem with that. Knowing what I know now and how to optimize the path, I realized it didn't need to take 60 hours to do this, but at the time I'm spending so much time exploring, it's annoying when I get stuck on bosses and I can only think about how much better it would be if I had the build I wanted to get. Of course, there's the aspect of the journey and seeing how far you've come, but it was still in the back of my mind every time I died to some bullshit boss. Speaking of how long things take, this game is far too long for certain things. Don't get me wrong, I love big games, but there are certain aspects that really rub me the wrong way. As a part of this civil rights beam build I wanted to get an armor set that the guide explained and recommended to me. I watched a video on how to get the armor set, and the explanation was, just complete this quest and you'll get the armor set. What I didn't know is that this quest had two endings. When I got to this point, I wanted to know what each ending meant. One ending gave me a good upgrade material that I needed, and the other ending just gave a set of armor. This was not the set of armor I was chasing. Nowhere was it made clear that if I picked the wrong ending, I would be locked out of the armor set I was chasing, so I picked the one that gave me the upgrade material. This was the wrong ending, and this was an irreversible choice. What really annoyed me is that there is a church in the game where you can undo killing NPCs and all that, so my first thought was just resetting that. That didn't work, so at 56 hours into my playthrough, I made an irreversible error that locked me out of something I wanted to get. After more exploration throughout my time, I learned that there are several instances of this happening. Elden Ring is too big for irreversible changes to occur. Where playthroughs can take up to 100 hours, making an irreversible mistake is too much of an oversight in this type of game, especially when there is a feature to undo this kind of thing. As I was coming along my journey, I asked several friends that rave about this game, when does this game get good or when does this game get fun? I got varying answers, but for me it was this God Serpent boss. This was the part of the game where I said, okay, I get it now, I get why people like these games. And a bit of enjoyment was from me as well. These large-scale bosses were probably some of the only real enjoyment I got from this game. You know the ones I'm talking about, Godric, Scarscourge Radahn, Renala, the Fire Giant, the God Serpent, all of those. I enjoy these bosses because A, they are unique and do not repeat, and B, they are incredible set pieces that are just technical marvels full stop. Notice how I left the most iconic Dark Souls enemy out of this list. There are far too many dragons in this game. So many that they are boring to fight. A dragon in a video game is nothing short of iconicism. Dragons are in every video game known to man. They are in Mario, they are in Call of Duty, they are in Wizard 101. So when you think about the king of dragons in video games, the Souls series, you think it's the cream of the crop. Well, the desensitization, if that's even a real word, kicked in hard for dragons in Elden Ring. They just show up everywhere you go. They are even in Limgrave. I think the final nail in the coffin was in Caelid. There is this enormous dragon that was bigger than anything I've seen in the game. I knew this was too much for me, so I didn't even try to approach it. I walked around it and saw a player ghost just whacking at a spot on the dragon. I tried it and this killed the dragon without it even waking up. So far, this sounds like I hate the game, so why did I push through it? Part of it was the attitude I have towards fandoms. Again, this sounds pretty petty, but I will distance myself from cringe. There's a reason I still don't watch Rick and Morty. But after seeing Quantum TV's meltdown, I had to distance myself as far as possible from people like him. I knew I wasn't going to like the game, but I had to see it through to the end. But all jokes aside, there was a factor I talked about earlier. The world of Elden Ring is incredible. It's so dense with things to do everywhere you go. It's like a painting. It's impossibly curated so that everywhere you go is like a work of art. No matter what angle you look at a vista from, it's still incredible and wonderfully accented by a massive yellow tree in the middle. The world keeps going long past when you think it's over. I think the scale of this game really blew me away when my one friend told me that this tree is in the middle of the map, and that the actual menu map you get is intentionally curated this way. You don't see the full scale of the map until you unlock it all. The only map you get is of Limgrave at the very start. The map keeps expanding when you get to new areas, and it consistently blows you away. Personally, I thought this game would end at the capital after killing Morgoth, but there's an entire section after this, which is crazy, and there's an entire underground area, and there's an entire tornado world, and an entire tree world. Exploration in this game is bar none. The differences in the biomes is pretty wild, and nearly all of them are a joy to explore and walk around in. Another feature of the game that accelerated my enjoyment of this game is spirit summons. This feature is so critical, I do not think I would have completed the game if this wasn't a feature, and seeing how it isn't in previous FromSoft titles, I will most likely not play those. These are basically teammates you can summon on a whim and they can help you in a fight, especially the Mimic tier, which is an exact clone of you. You can tag team and completely clean house. This, alongside summoning other players and friends, is a feature I really enjoyed. This was an amazing feature I loved using as a tool for A, the bosses take less time to do, and B, to get the bosses off my back for a bit. I really hope this is brought back in the future FromSoft titles. Speaking of the future, I do worry what's in store for the next title. Elden Ring is the most accessible game in the series, and I worry that it will ruin the DNA of what makes the Souls games so great for so many. I worry it will be the same road that Destiny took. Destiny 1 was such a success, but when Destiny 2 released, it was too much on the side of the casual audience. It has taken years to course correct Destiny 2, but I worry that this same fate will come to other FromSoft titles. Because me and other FromSoft casuals enjoyed Elden Ring so much, will they cave into it appealing to more casuals, or will the core of these games stay? I'm not sure, but we'll have to wait and see. I enjoyed my time with Elden Ring. I still won't play any previous FromSoft titles, but maybe new ones in the future. This is due to the fact that the saving grace features aren't in previous titles. But I don't regret playing it. I had a good time, and in a time where games are in a low point right now, I'd say give this one a shot if you have never played a Souls game before, but have thought about trying them at some point. It takes a very, very long time, but in the end, I had a good time. I hope it didn't piss off any hardcore Souls fans. Thanks for watching.